Welcome to Reapit's Apps in the Spotlight podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Reapit Apps in the Spotlight podcast, an opportunity to learn more about the new apps and integrations that have launched into the Reapit AppMarket. In each podcast, we hear from a different partner who will give us a quick introduction to their PropTech service, outline the main features of their product, and explain the key benefits for Reapit customers. Today, I have with me Dan Salmons, CEO of Coadjute. Welcome, Dan. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, Andy. Really nice to be here.
Coadjute is a really interesting business proposition. In my opinion, it has the potential to completely revolutionize sales progression of the industry. Perhaps we could just start by you telling us a bit about your background, maybe the history of Coadjute.
Yeah, no, be glad to. Yeah, I've been innovating mostly in and around financial services for most of the last 30 years. I was responsible for leading the rollout of contactless in the UK at a time when the idea of replacing cash with anything was crazy stuff. I introduced the UK's first mobile payments phone. I've launched on the Apple Watch. I've done all sorts of things over the years. But a few years ago, I was looking across from payments at the property and mortgage market, and it struck me that it just really hadn't been through the same amount of digitization that fintech had seen in the last 20 years. And I ended up taking a role as head of innovation at NatWest, looking at mortgages. And whilst I was there, it just became clear that mortgages were just the first couple of weeks of what was a much longer and more problematic journey. And that's where I was hunting around for solutions and came across what at the time was a pilot. And Coadjute had been set up by a few guys for the land registry, actually. The land registry had invited people to pitch for a project to demonstrate blockchain. And they'd done that, and it had been very successful and widely reported. And now we're inviting broader parties to take part and just try it out and see what happens. So I got involved in an early stage pilot, and it completely blew me away what was possible with the blockchain. And I guess I voted with my feet, and shortly after joined Coadjute as chief executive, and we've been growing ever since.
So in terms of the challenges that the property market has today, how do you see Coadjute helping to solve these particular challenges?
Well, I think the thing that's worth noting, and it may not be obvious to all of us inside the property market, but it's actually quite an unusual market. It's really an ecosystem of lots of different professions, of real estate, of legal, of financial, with government involved, surveying. There's all these different professions, all of who had to work together to get a property deal done. But unlike other industries where different professions have to work together, there's no infrastructure. There's no market infrastructure, as we would call it. And, imagine a stock exchange trying to work without a stock exchange, with buyers and sellers having to trade shares without that, or indeed an insurance market or global banking without payments. We're just missing a piece of core infrastructure. And that's why it's so difficult to find data, to find out what's going on with a property transaction, to sort things like identity, even to complete a property transaction and move the funds. Everything's difficult because there's no market infrastructure. And various people have tried different ways of putting in little hubs around the market where data can be pooled and shared, but it doesn't really solve the fundamental problem, which is we want to connect with each other. And that's the problem that Coadjute now tackles.
I can see how this connects up with the sales progression side of estate agency, because I remember in my days as an agent, pre-internet, desperately battling in sales progression, trying to understand what's going on with the various different components within the sale, keeping in touch with solicitors and building societies and all sorts of different, all the different components, but they were all disconnected. And I guess that's what you're addressing here.
Yeah, we absolutely are. It's we don't really think about it, but if you imagine you're an estate agent and you have your CRM, your agency cloud, and that has a database that's keeping the details of your property transaction. But meanwhile, what the seller's conveyancer and the buyer's conveyancer and the mortgage broker and all sorts of other people also have a record on their database of the same property transaction. And the only way those sync up is when we phone and email each other. There are some ad hoc connections, but it's really hard to get one view of the truth. And what Coadjute does is it uses the power of blockchain to connect all of those systems and effectively make them interoperable without having to pull the data in the middle. It allows you to synchronize the data on all those systems, which means that when a conveyancer updates their case management system, you see it in real time on your system. When you are put on a message or add a document or update, that automatically appears over on the conveyancer system. And that's not true of those two. That's true of as many systems are involved in that property transaction. So suddenly you go from being disconnected systems to truly real-time connected, and in a fantastically secure way. I think it's really important to say there is no database in the middle. There is no Coadjute platform. It's your system, Agency Cloud, being connected to all of these other systems in a way that makes them completely interoperable. It's very, very cool technology.
Sounds really, really, really clever. And you've talked about Agency Cloud there, and so you have an app within the app market in Agency Cloud. Let's talk about that a bit. Can you tell us a bit about that, how that works, please?
Yeah, so the applet within Agency Cloud, it's in familiar Reapit branding. It'll look familiar to all of you who use the CRM. But what it is fully integrated with the rest of the CRM. So what that does is the first thing it allows you to do is to search on the Coadjute network for the other people involved in your property transaction, the conveyancers, for example, who are involved in the deal. Invite them to join you in what we call a deal room. So it's very easy. You just type in, invite them to join you. When they accept that invitation, that'll pop up within their native system and they accept it. At that point, you're now connected, and that means you will start to see progress updates.
Thank you for listening to Reapit's Apps in the Spotlight podcast.
From their system, and indeed vice versa. You can add information on your side and that will appear on theirs. And that's all fully integrated with the rest of the Agency Cloud system. There's also a messaging capability so that you can send messages, and those are going natively from within one system to another. So fantastically secure, but also what's convenient is that's stored within the app as well. So it's all within the Reapit system. So it's very, very easy to use, actually.
And that's really interesting, because one of the questions that we often get is that so an agent will be using Agency Cloud and they have access to this app, and there's a question as to whether the information is almost separate. So you bounce from one to the other. But it sounds like the data within Coadjute and Agency Cloud are very close together. Can you just talk to that and explain how that works?
Yes, we really don't have databases at Coadjute. It takes a bit to get your head around, actually, because you say, but hang on, but everyone's looking at the same information. They are looking at the same information, but it's on their own database, not on ours. And what we're doing is we're synchronizing it. So yeah, any data you're looking at is effectively, it's Agency Cloud data within your Agency Cloud system. And any data that comes across the Coadjute network updates that system. So yeah, it's not being stored separately. It's constantly either adding to what you're doing or you're adding to it, and then it's replicating into someone else's system that you're dealing with on the property transaction. So yeah, it means it takes away, I think, a lot of the concerns people rightly have, for example, about data security and some third party storing their data. That's not what's going on here. What it's really doing is duplicating what you've got into other systems.
It sounds incredibly clever. How are you going to roll this out across the market?
Yeah, it's really exciting. So most of the CRMs now in the market and most of the case management systems have either announced or are talking to Coadjute about joining the network. We're in discussions with mortgage brokers and lenders, and also we'll be making announcements shortly about identity providers and data providers and others. So I think what we've got now is a really strong set of momentum across the industry that now is the chance to start connecting up. I think the app within Reapit is a really nice application of it, and it's been awesome to work with the team at Reapit to develop it. We've been, over the last few months since launch, we've been in beta. We've been testing things and improving things and refining things. So I think it works really elegantly now, and we're going to be adding many more of those other systems and many of the people that your estate agents deal with over the coming months. And what you'll see is a gradual rollout accelerating over the next 6-12 months. And I think by 24 months' time, I would be surprised if most people in the property market don't have access to Coadjute on their desktop.
That's amazing. And what's the future for Coadjute? Where do you plan to take this thing?
Well, there's a lot to do, and it's worth saying, as a network, we have a slightly different role to perhaps most. We sometimes get called a PropTech, but in a way, we're a PropTech, we're a FinTech, we're a LawTech. We're the network, really. So we're very much driven by the community and what they want. So the functionality that we've put live first, which is sales progression and messaging, is what everyone's been asking for. So what comes next is more functionality, actually. There's a lot of demand for identity. There's a lot of demand for moving of documents. And we'll be driven by that. So expanding the functionality, the movement of funds is something, as I know, the banks are very interested in. So there's discussions going on about that. And then the expansion to other areas of the market. So at the moment, we're focused on estate agents and conveyancers, but you'll soon see mortgage brokers, for example, joining the network. And then beyond that, I think what we're excited about is seeing how other people innovate. So we're already in some discussions with people who want to create consumer apps that would run off Coadjute. We've got all sorts of people coming to us now with innovations to be able to do things that would help the property market, which were impossible before because you'd have to connect to everybody, and now suddenly becomes much easier. And then it's worth saying that there's international interest as well, actually, and the world is watching. This is the world's first end-to-end blockchain for the property market here in the UK. So the world is watching us, and we've particularly got a huge interest from the US in what Coadjute are doing here in the UK. And I think it could well be a model for what happens globally, because our problems here in the UK about not having a market infrastructure for property are not unique to us, actually. Most major markets have very similar problems. So, yeah, it's a really exciting moment. And I know a lot of people say to me, isn't this impossible? Could this ever happen? It's been so many years. It's been such a problem. But I remember people saying that in my early days in contactless, when we were first saying that we were going to replace cash. And really, it's hard to imagine a solution because there's never been the right technology to crack it before. But now with blockchain and the developments in enterprise blockchain over recent years, at last, we have the technology that lets you connect lots of systems to each other in a way that lets them interoperate in a fantastically secure way. It's possible now. So, yeah, I think it's inevitable. It's really exciting. It's about time, really, isn't it?
Dan, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And we do wish you all the very best with the product and the company. If you'd like to find out more about this product offering, you can do so on our website at reapit.com/foundations/partners. And if you're an existing Reapit Enterprise client and are interested in installing the app for your agency, just simply contact your customer success manager. As with every app in the app market, installation just takes seconds. And that's all for this episode. I hope you found it useful. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to Reapit's Apps in the Spotlight podcast.